and today's lecture is number 7. And the title of the lecture is Translation of Orations. The learning outcomes of this lecture are hopefully by the end of this lecture you should be able to show some kind of understanding of what is meant by orations or oratorical speech, or to translate, and then you would be able to translate certain excerpts of oratorical speech. It's a bit unusual, or it's a bit probably new to you, but hopefully by the end of this lecture the translation of orations will be clearer to you. First of all, let's talk, or let's understand what is meant, what is meant by oratory. Now, an oratory is an elaborate and prepared speech. It is the art of swaying an audience by eloquent speech. Very simple. Now, you prepare a speech and you try to make it as eloquent, as good as possible, so that you convince people with your views. If you want me, sway means to change my views so that I can follow you and I can accept your views. It's an art. It's really like a speaker. He is, for instance, in ancient Greece, for instance, and Rome, oratory was included under the term rhetoric, which meant the art of composing as well as delivering a speech. When you say the rhetoric of this speaker is excellent, you know, for instance, the rhetoric of الدكتور القرني is very powerful. He addresses people in a very eloquent way. Again, I mean, there are so many people around here, but let's talk about in ancient Greek and in ancient Rome. There were great orators, if we call them. They are called Cato the Elder and Mark Antony and Cicero. They were really very good orators. When they spoke, they made people rise. Why? Because they used certain rhetoric. So this is what we mean by oratory or orations. Now, the theory of rhetoric was discussed by Aristotle long time ago, and it means really it means to be able to persuade people. It means to be able to achieve condemnation or approval of a person's actions, or to be able to persuade people while you are giving any sermons or ceremonial occasions. So orations could be used in these three cases: to persuade an audience, to approve or disapprove a matter of public policy, or to display a rhetoric used as a ceremonial occasion. It's now the rhetoric, or the concept of rhetoric then was used by people who came after the Romans, then after after Aristotle, and even in the Middle Ages during the Renaissance and the Reformation. Oratory was generally confined to the church, which produced soul-searing orators such as Martin Luther. I'm sure you have heard of Martin Luther, who was a good speaker, and he was a good orator. And why? Because he used elaborate and prepared speech, and he managed to sway people, sway the audience. By what? By his eloquent speech. Regarding orations, what concerns us here really is all types of orations. I mean, if we say religious sermons, for instance, which are normally addressed to a wider audience of diverse classes of people, tend to replete with religious allusions and appeal to the emotions, which profoundly influence the oratorical style of many orators or speakers. Now we have, for instance, people in the mosques, when they are called orators, speakers, and there of course there are different speakers. Why? Because they have their own prepared speech, which they can really write eloquently and carefully and appropriately, so that they influence the audience in the mosque. There is another oratorical style which could be described as bombastic style, like that of Hitler and Mussolini, and they used to have their own style. I'm sure you've heard of Hitler and Mussolini. Hitler, he was in Germany, and Mussolini was in Italy. And an opposite oratorical style to bombastic is an intimate and conversational orations, as in the when, for instance, like President Franklin Roosevelt, he used to sit next, like a fireside chats. He used to sit next to fireside and talk to people. So this is called intimate and conversational rhetoric. Now, in our present time, television now made more demands on the orator. For instance, we have on TV so many public speakers. They don't need only to speak well and to speak eloquently, and but also they need to look well and presentable, so that they influence the people who are watching them or who are listening to them. This is just very briefly an introduction about what we mean by orations or oratory, and I hope that that you now understand what we mean by it, because you cannot translate an oration without really understanding the meaning of an oration, the characteristics of an oration, the features of an oration. So I hope that it is clear to you. Now let's move to the translation of orations. Now, how can we translate orations if we wanted to? Now, translating orations ranges in terms of difficulty from translating simple farewell speeches of university outgoing students to the most difficult oratorical speeches of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Our main concern here is the translation of religious orations. I would, however, like to start with the following general example of orations, trying to analyze it with you as you warm up for a more advanced type of rhetoric. Now, we have general orations, as in translating a farewell speech, for example, a speech given by an outgoing student. This kind of a speech, hopefully when you graduate, inshallah, hopefully you will be able to give or to deliver a speech in front of so many colleagues of yours. And this kind of rhetoric or this kind of oration or this kind of speech tend to be emotive, with hints of gratitude and appreciation, along with expressions of future prospects of both the audience and the outgoing students. So when you understand that these are the main features of general oration, then you would be able to translate it. Now let's take this example. I have included to you here this example in English, and I'm going to take part of it to see how we can translate it into Arabic. This example is short and adapted of an outgoing student speech addressed to outgoing student at their graduation ceremony in the UK, and see how you would translate it into Arabic. Now this is an exercise for you. Try it out, but before you see the other slide. Now here, look. But before you look at this slide, try to translate it yourself. How would you translate distinguished guests? Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow students, good afternoon. Would you translate distinguished guests, ضيوفنا الكرام, or ضيوفنا المميزين? Ladies and gentlemen, would you translate it سادتي سادتي, or I don't know, أيها السادة, أيها السيدات, or السادة الحضور? My fellow students, زملاء الطلاب, أصدقائي, أصحابي, it's up to you, but you need to take into account the features of orations. You need to take into account the equivalence. You need to take into account the communicative purpose. If you say أصحاب الطلاب, does it make, I mean, would it give the exact effect you want to give? So this is just a sample translation. Good afternoon. Would you translate it here in Saudi Arabia to مساء الخير? Or would you say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah? You know, you need to balance it. You need to really, you need to be aware of all these connotations. Not only linguistic connotations, cultural, social, conventional. Now, I'm greatly honored to be chosen to stand up here to represent my fellow graduates and welcome you to our graduation day. I know some of you might come up with a better translation than this. I'm sure some of you might come up with better translation. This is just a sample. This is an example. And you can tell I'm greatly honored. يشرفني إنه لشرف كبير لي. يشرفني تشريفا عظيما. I don't know. I mean, I leave it to you. But you need to be able to come up with a translation that would attract the attention of your audience. And the way you present it, the way you speak it, the way you give your orations or rhetoric, you know, is very important. So I don't want to go through it word by word, but this is just an example. Compare the English and with the Arabic and see for yourself. But please, you know, I would like you to translate this slide. I would like you to translate the whole orations or the whole speech into Arabic at your own convenience. But please translate it and compare your translation, especially the first with this example. You know, the first bit, the first two paragraphs. All right. Now we move to religious orations, but this type of religious orations is non-prophetic type. In other words, I mean, the style is different, but it is religious, you know. But of course, it is not the style of the Prophet ﷺ. And let's see how you would translate a speech by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. Look at the following short rhetorical speech by our great Khalifa Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, addressed to the army leader Abu Ubaidah bin Mas'ud al-Thaqafi while he was getting ready to liberate Iraq in 13 Hijrah. How would you translate an oratory like this or like that of Umar into English and achieve equivalence in English? Communicative purpose of his speech. Can you communicate purposefully his speech in a style that signals that this is a translation of Umar ibn al-Khattab, who said it in that space of time and context of the first years of Islamic widespread expansion. Now listen. عندما أمر عمر بن الخطاب أبو عبيدة بن مسعود الثقفي على حرب العراق سنة 13 هجرية قال له, what did he say? He said, إنك تقدم على أرض المكر والخديعة والخيانة, تقدم على قوم قد جرأوا على الشر فعلموه وتناسوا الخير فجهلوه, فانظر كيف تكون واخزن لسانك ولا تفشين سرك, فإن صاحب السر ما ضبطه متحصن لا يؤتى من وجه يكره وإذا ضيعه كان بمضيعة. Now this is a speech. How are you going to translate it into English? I'll take the first bit, and I'm not going to tell you which one is the right one. Now how would you translate the following into English? Is it A, B, C, or D? إنك تقدم على أرض المكر والخديعة والخيانة. You are coming to the land of guile, deceit, and treachery. You are going to the land of guile, deceit, and treachery. You are heading towards the land of guile, deceit, and treachery. You are bound for the land of guile, deceit, and treachery. Now, there are some other words for al-makr, like cunning. You need to really think. I mean, you can come up with different versions of translation of this except from Umar's speech. So I leave it to you, which is the most appropriate translation of this saying of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. Now let's look at the following excerpt taken from an English religious sermon and try to translate it into Arabic. Now this is another excerpt from English. I will read out just the first bit. Life is a warfare between two standards, the standard of right and the standard of wrong. It is a warfare wide as the world. It rages in every nation, every city, in the heart of every man. Satan desires all men to come under his standard, and to this end lures them with riches, honors, powers, all that ministers to the lust and pride of man. God, on the contrary, invites all to fight under his standard, the standard of Islam, and his messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is certain of ultimate victory against Satan and his army. Now comes the imperious cry of command: choose God or Satan, choose sanctity or sin, choose heaven or hell, and in the choice you make is summed up the life of every man. Now I would like you to translate this into Arabic in a rhetorical, in an oration way, you know, in a form of a speech you want to deliver. Now, an example, for instance, how would you translate the following into Arabic? Is it A, B, C, D, or E, or F, or something else? Life is warfare, a warfare between two standards, the standard of right and the standard of wrong. الحياة حرب بين الصح والخطأ، الحياة حرب بين الصواب والغلط، الحياة معركة بين الحق والباطل، الحياة معركة بين الخير والشر. Which one? Now I leave it to you to decide. Now the third type of orations, religious orations, is a prophetic type. Now unlike any other type of text translations, the translator of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ orations should really have additional characteristics which would make him or her outstanding. The translator should be really God-fearing, religiously knowledgeable, bilingual, and bicultural person. Above all, should have this extra bit of rhetoric and style in both source language and target language. Now, how are you going to translate the Prophet's last sermon into English? Now look at, for instance, this is part of it. I would like you to see whether we can achieve equivalence, approximate equivalence, achieve communicative purpose, and achieve a good style. The last sermon رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ابن إسحاق ثم مضى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على حجه فأرى الناس مناسكهم وأعلمهم سنن حجهم وخطب الناس خطبته التي بين فيها ما بين فحمد الله وأثنى عليه ثم قال أيها الناس اسمعوا قولي فإني لا أدري لعلي لا ألقاكم بعد عامي هذا بهذا الموقف أبدا. أيها الناس إن دماءكم وأموالكم عليكم حرام إلى أن تلقوا ربكم كحرمة يومكم هذا وكحرمة شهركم هذا وإنكم ستلقون ربكم فإنكم فيسألكم عن أعمالكم. I will leave the rest of it. Now look at this is the whole sermon. I will leave it. I'm not going to read it out for you. I leave it to you. But now listen or look at how I translated this. أيها الناس اسمعوا قولي فإني لا أدري لعلي لا ألقاكم بعد عامي هذا بعد عامي هذا بهذا الموقف أبدا. O people, listen carefully to what I say, for I don't know whether I will ever meet you again here after this year. You know, so compare this translation and the second part as well. You see, this is just examples of prophetic orations. I would like you to translate it, translate the whole sermon. Here, practical A, translate the following oratory into Arabic. Use your creative ability in your translation. We have this whole sermon. I would like you to translate it from English into Arabic as a practice, and I'd like you to translate the following from Arabic into English. Please, why I'm giving you all these practicals? Because as I explained it to you in lecture, the introductory lecture, that you need to practice, you need to do a lot of practice. Please translate on your own, and what I am giving you is just it's just like a guideline for you. The rest of the work is falls on you. So please work at home, and inshallah you will be a good you will be good translators, all of you, and I wish you all the best, and thank you very much indeed.